All right, we are live. Hello, I am Chelsea, and welcome to Space Chat. For those who haven't been here before, this is the weekly Space.com show where I hop on to tell you everything that's new in space and answer your questions live. Now, because this is live, I'd like to give everyone 30 seconds or a minute just to give them enough time to log on and so that no one feels excluded, and then we will be getting into it. So feel free to sound off in the comments below if you are joining us. Let me know if you've been here before, or if this is your first time watching Space Chat. So I'm going to give everyone about 20 seconds or so. Make sure that we're all doing good on the technical side of things. It looks like we are. Very exciting. And let's get into it. So this week, there's quite a bit going on in space. I'm going to be talking about SpaceX's Halloween launch, a crazy solar flare going on, and some amazing space science. So without further ado, thank you for joining me for Space Chat. Let's chat. So as I say quite often, space is a busy place, and this week is no exception. For those of us that celebrate, this Sunday marks Halloween, but NASA and SpaceX won't be trick-or-treating. They will be up early on Halloween as SpaceX's Crew 3 mission is set to launch at 2:21 a.m. Eastern Time from NASA's Kennedy by a few days due to the weather, but there's nothing official on a delay. People are just watching the weather, and you just never know. Florida's weather can be quite unpredictable, and they want to make sure this is a safe, smooth, successful launch. Now, the crew for Crew 3 includes NASA astronauts Rajashari, who will be commanding the mission, Tom Marshburn, Caleb Barron, and Germany's Matthias Maurer. Now, 3 of these 4 astronauts are rookie astronauts. So while Tom Marshburn has flown to space more than once, the 3 other astronauts, this will all be their first ever flight to space. Very exciting. And right now, they're undergoing final preparations ahead of the liftoff. Now, the astronauts will launch on board a Crew Dragon spacecraft named Endurance, which will lift off on top of a Falcon 9 rocket. Once on the space station, there will be a brief transition period where the astronauts from Crew 2 will basically just be handing things over to the new crew, helping them get situated, having a little bit of time to interact, talk, and then the Crew 2 astronauts will soon make their way home. The Crew 3 astronauts will spend 6 months on board the space station, and they're launching with over 200 science experiments that they will be working on during that time. These include medical experiments and even a food study to show the impact of improved space food for astronauts. Does better food really have a serious impact on overall astronaut health after 6 months? We'll see. Now, research like this, obviously these are just 2 small examples, but research like this that's sent to the space station of these hundreds of experiments, obviously some of it can help us to explore how to better protect and better keep healthy astronauts going to and from space, but a lot of this research can also be applied directly to life back here on Earth. By understanding how life responds, reacts, and behaves in extreme conditions in space, we can better understand how that works on Earth. And in fact, there's a lot of space research on the space station that leads to cancer therapies, new vaccines, immunotherapies, all kinds of really amazing developments for humans here on Earth. Now, another Halloween happening, there is a massive solar flare going on. A powerful solar flare, also known as a solar storm, erupted on Thursday, shooting out charged particles that traveled out towards Earth. Now, those particles are expected to arrive at Earth over this Halloween weekend. And once those solar particles interact with Earth's atmosphere, that can create an incredible aurora and basically amplify. So if you've heard of the northern lights, you might know a thing or two about auroras. When these solar particles interact with Earth's atmosphere, that's what creates all of the colors, the light show in the atmosphere, so to speak. Now, the northern lights are fairly routine, and they happen because the solar wind, which is the same charged particles from the sun, will routinely kind of emanate out and interact with our atmosphere. But with this solar storm, there's a lot more particles than usual. So those auroras will be extra powerful. And so it won't just be extra brilliant to look at, that aurora, the northern lights, will actually stretch much farther than usual. In fact, the northern lights could be visible this weekend as far south as New York. They could be visible in Idaho, Illinois, Oregon, Maryland, even Nevada, scientists have said at NASA. Now, for skywatchers trying to look and see the northern lights, it won't be easy if you live in a bright city, as light pollution can make it hard to see. So if you can get to some dark sky to view the northern lights, if you are in range, that would be amazing. But if you're out of range or you just aren't going to be able to see them, there will be some other spectacular things to look out for in the sky as well. Now, while Jupiter and Saturn are visible right now in the night sky, Venus is the brightest planet. Venus is what you want to look for. It's the brightest planet in the night sky right now. And if you look southwest, you should be able to catch a glimpse. Now, aside from sky watching, talking about space, things, as we know, don't always go according to plan. And this week, something else happened with Hubble. This week, there was another technical glitch with the Hubble Space Telescope, and Hubble was subsequently placed into safe mode. Now, this is something that unfortunately has happened in recent history. NASA shared their statement. They said, Hubble's science instruments went into safe mode on Monday after experiencing synchronization issues with internal spacecraft communications. Science observations have been temporarily suspended while the team investigates the issue. However, they added, the instruments remain in good health. So what safe mode is for something like Hubble, basically the team can keep Hubble powered on, but they turn off the science instruments. It's not actively observing, and they just basically keep it on and running while they work through the issue, while they try to figure out exactly what went on, why it happened, and to fix it. So it's still in safe mode. They're still working on it, but fingers crossed that Hubble pulls through. Now, looking into the future a little bit with some future missions coming up in the next couple of months, there's a lot of excitement with two specific missions, DART and James Webb. DART is actually an asteroid defense mission. So it's set to launch in less than a month from California. And the mission will quite literally, on purpose, crash into an asteroid. It will hit a small asteroid that orbits a larger asteroid. And basically the team behind DART hopes that they can hit this smaller asteroid into a closer orbit around the bigger asteroid. Now, these asteroids pose no threat to Earth. They're not on a path to interact with Earth at all. They're far off and doing their own thing. However, this is a test to see that if, for instance, there were an astronaut in a trajectory that threatened Earth in any kind of way, could they send out a spacecraft like DART, and could they push that asteroid into a different trajectory so it goes in a different direction and there's less chance of it colliding with Earth. So this is going to be a really important test mission for the future of planetary defense should an asteroid pose a threat to Earth anytime in the future. So really important, really excited to see that all go down. Now, looking just another month into the future in December, the James Webb Space Telescope is finally going to launch. Webb is said to be the most powerful space telescope that has ever been built and will have launched to date. And while the launch has been delayed quite a few times over the years, this could completely change and expand our view and understanding of the universe. Webb will primarily observe infrared light from faint and distant objects. So because of this, it will be able to essentially peer back in time, looking at some of the earliest days of our universe, answering some of humanity's most pressing and long-standing questions about where all of this came from, how all of this, our entire universe, came to be, came to form, and what it looked like all the way back then. So lots of excitement this week, this weekend, and in the coming months. So that's been what's new in space. Now we get to my favorite part of Space Chat, the chatting. Now, if you haven't been here before, the way that Space Chat works is I tell you all that's going on in space and space science, and then I open it up to your questions, and I answer as many of your questions as I can get through in the time I have. So if you have not gotten to ask a question yet, and you have a question about space, science, anything I mentioned, feel free to drop it into the comments below, and I will get through as many as I can, I promise. So I'm turning my attention over here. I'm going to have a little sip of water. Hydration. It's key. All right, let's see. Kimberly, boy, you have loads to talk about this week. Yes, I do, Kimberly. I mean, it feels like every week is this busy in space, but this week feels especially busy. You are right. Okay. Ryan, great question. What does the advantage of space add to these experiments? That's a great question. Why does doing an experiment in space make it better for any reason? So basically, we've been doing, similar experiments on Earth. And by removing gravity, let me give you an example. Say they're testing out a new immunotherapy or a new medical treatment of any kind. They will have the same experiment going on Earth. They'll test how it functions. Sometimes there's fluid dynamics involved. And then they'll do that same experiment in space without gravity. And often what they find is properties of something they're studying or something they didn't know about it kind of uncovered when you remove gravity from the situation. Also, I mean, there's a recent plastics experiment actually that's launching to the space station, actually with the beauty brand Estee Lauder, which is kind of interesting. And one of the things they're going to be doing is figuring out a way to make a more eco-friendly version of plastic. And so they're like, well, we can make it in space and that's really interesting and cool, but how does that help us on Earth? We can't really have space become a factory for these bioplastics. However, I was speaking to one of the team members this week, and with this one specific thing, which happens in many different experiments, when you change something in space, like say an organism, if you're looking at bioplastics, and then you bring it back down to Earth, it's going to stay the same. And so you can basically have it in space, experiment with it, create this new thing, bring it down, and then replicate it once it's back on Earth. So when you remove gravity, you can really learn more about something and also push the boundaries of what's possible when you create new things. And so you're not just bringing down that new knowledge. Sometimes you can even bring down new organisms and materials that could not have been created with gravity present. So it's a long-winded response to your question. I could go on for hours, but if that gives you a little bit of an answer. Okay. Jeffrey asks, will there be artificial gravity? No, astronauts on the space station, there's no artificial gravity. They are floating around. They are everything up there it's technically microgravity because it's not that far from Earth. There's still the tiniest little bit of gravitational pull still happening, but essentially there is no gravity going on. Let's see. Salma on YouTube asks, are aliens real? That's a great question. I would love to know. NASA actually launched a rover to Mars this year to answer that question, to find evidence of alien life. So NASA's trying to answer it. I would love to know the answer. And as soon as we do, I'd love to let you know. Okay. On YouTube, SN just says, I love space. Me too. Excellent. Okay. Steve on Facebook asks, have they fixed the pipe on the toilet yet? Great question. So something that came out recently was that the toilet system in SpaceX's Crew Dragon had a bit of a leaking issue, which when you're talking about liquid or solid, any kind of material that you don't want floating around without gravity, that's an issue, right? And so this apparently has been an issue with previous launches, but astronauts actually didn't know that the toilet system had an issue because it was happening essentially under the surface. It was happening kind of behind the scenes, closer to the outside of the spacecraft. But they detected the issue and they fixed it. So even though the astronauts, thankfully, did not have to deal with the consequences of the leak in any kind of horrible fashion, they have fixed it, from what I understand, for this upcoming launch, which is very good, because the last thing you want to have to worry about while launching into space is the toilet leaking, at least in my opinion. Paul, yes, but what existed before the Big Bang? Well, Paul, it's a great question. I really hope to answer that for you someday. All right, let's see. All right, Steve says, now that space is getting so congested, Who will rule what's going on up there when there's issues with other countries, spacecrafts? It's a great question. So this is new territory, right? In the 60s, the Outer Space Treaty was a document that was created to start trying to internationally and collaboratively govern how we interact in space, how we interact with space resources. Can we take things? Can we leave things? Who can go where, when, how? So it kind of started there, and it's been slowly evolving. And with so many new crewed launches happening just in the last couple of years, with so much happening, that conversation has definitely ignited even more so. I know that obviously NASA works alongside many other countries in space, countries like Russia. Now, while there have been issues between countries in space that continue to be worked through between government agencies, there is also collaboration. So it's still kind of early days, still trying to figure out exactly what that will look like. But of course, SpaceX can't just launch whenever they want. They do have to get clearance from the FAA, and the FAA, of course, is part of the US government. So there is, even with commercial launches, there has to be some kind of regulation over who's launching when, so that there's no traffic jams in space, to put it very, very simply. But really, really good question. Let's see. Right. Mud on YouTube asks, is there any way to remove gravity? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by remove gravity. Actually, on Earth, we can simulate the removal of gravity on parabolic flights, similar almost to how you might feel on a really extreme roller coaster lifting out of your seat. Parabolic airplane flights simulate the lack of gravity. So there are basically creating free fall, but you feel kind of like you're floating. Oh, I actually did it. It was crazy. But you're not floating. You're technically in free fall. So there are early development, basically just kind of ideas and theories on how you might simulate the opposite, simulate gravity while in space, which would be really interesting to see that start to happen. Lots of aliens comments and questions, guys. I wish I could answer. If I knew about any aliens, I promise I'd tell you. All right, just on YouTube, is there life on Mars? We don't know. Scientists do think that it's possible that there was life on Mars, ancient life. Mars actually, at one point in time, looked a lot like Earth. It had a thick atmosphere. They think there were rivers. They think there was all kinds of water all over its surface, thick atmosphere, pretty Earth-like. So scientists do think that it's likely that there is life or was life at some point in time on Mars. And that's why they sent the Perseverance rover from NASA to try to find evidence of it. They haven't found it quite yet, but they did just arrive just a few months ago. So still a lot of work to do on that front. Okay. All right. And I'm going to leave it there with life on Mars. Thank you all for your wonderful questions and for joining me for Space Chat this week. I hope you